So this beautiful gin, it's Confluence American Gin, courtesy of Still 630. And you and we actually both met David. Do you
We
remember
did, and
David
he's
from the
amazing.
judging?
Yes, he actually sent me the nicest email, and I haven't responded. How about that? Rude me, rude. And
Wow.
it's funny when I received it. I was in the midst of actually another competition, and I basically like teared up because it was so kind. And as you funny when I opened this last night, I was like, oh no, I owe him an email.
Well, David, this is your
This
this
is
is
for
your
you, my
warning.
friend.
Incoming from Tracie. You got an email. So
Oh,
so the crazy thing about this was you and I both met David, and then we've got a period of time that elapses between when we do the judging blind and then we find out all the winners that are announced publicly. And when I was reading the public announcement, I was like, "Oh, damn! David's gin actually won."
right.
And I feel like that's kind of, and maybe it's not rare. I mean, obviously they have a great group of people that they pull from as judges at ADI, but it was so great to be able to talk to him and then have that like, yeah, you go, buddy, kind of moment when they made the announcement.
Right, and they had more, and one of the things that they were trying to do was to make sure that you didn't get your own product, right? So we know that this came through a totally separate table. He didn't get to touch that or taste that, and it still won, So it's not that it was biased in any way towards him. We had no idea his product was even part of it. I didn't. He never told me, and so pretty exciting to see it come out on top.
Yeah. So I guess first question is, I think you and I both nosed it and we were like, oh, ooh, invigorating. So
Yes.
what are your first impressions of the nose of this
Well, for
spirit?
me, this is incredibly floral. So we're definitely getting that juniper. It's there, but this is floral. There's lots of big round, like uh, blood orange as well, citrus.
Ooh, yeah, I like
Um,
that.
yeah, because it's not like a sharp. It's got a depth to it.
It is a very aromatic gin.
Yes,
And obviously gin is an aromatic spirits
of course.
category, but this is, one of the things that I like to ask when I have a piece of information like this was the best craft gin at ADI is like, all right, what did those other people see in this gin that made it really stand out? And to me, that really intense aroma,
Yes.
but not intense in a bad way, not intense in,
No, it's not like you
you
walked
know,
into your grandmother's bathroom, right? It's not
right,
like.
right. But it's
And it's
intense.
not pine. It's also not walking into a pine forest. I feel like there's even maybe a little lemongrass or something. Like this is just, there's a lot going on here, and I am excited to dip my nose in every single time and find something new.
Yeah, it's one of those spirits that I'm almost content just nosing. Obviously, we're going to taste this, but
Yes,
it's like if I could capture this in a sort of like a reed diffuser or a car freshener, like I would be totally
absolutely.
fine like walking around in this aroma all day.
Because it's very refreshing. Like it
Oh,
does. It's almost like when you have those oils that you put on, and they're like supposed to give you energy. I'm trying to think of like what's in those because this makes me feel like that
yeah.
is in there.
And we've got like a lovely like a lovely water scene on the front of it and like
Yeah.
refreshing. Yeah, like it is. It's refreshing to me. That's a great way to describe it. So I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna take a little
Let's do
sip
it.
here. And yeah, it's a little different. There's some other things emerging, especially I'm getting some spicier, almost peppercorny
I was
kind
literally,
of.
that was, yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Maybe like lime leaf. The lime leaves,
Ooh,
how they have that like almost bitterness, but that sour tart.
yeah, like a macru.
Lots of herbal that like, I feel like coriander is definitely in there.
Yeah, and I think coriander is a good call out, and I'd be curious to circle back with David on this because I've worked with botanicals in the cocktail bitter space, and so I
Mhm.
have a little bit of experience sourcing these botanicals. That, let's be honest, most of them are not. Most of a lot of the popular ones are not native to the
Right.
United States. The
Absolutely.
whole industry of spice trade goes back millennia, and so you can get good coriander,
Right.
and you can get maybe some older, drier, huskier tasting coriander. And for me, this is one of the few times when I can walk up to a craft gin and say, "Ooh, I get a lot of coriander," and not
And
be
it's
like,
that bright,
"But
fresh citrus coriander,
but it's kind
right?
of bitter," you know.
Oh,
This is not that.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so What would you use that, like, if you had to walk into a perfectly well stocked bar with this bottle, what and you had to like make a cocktail with it, and you had all the ingredients you can possibly want, what do you think your go-to drink might be for this particular gin?
That's very interesting. So I could do possibly a spirit forward French 75 with that. Again, I want to
Ooh.
push those citrus forward on this, but honestly, I think for a quality gin that has unique flavor profiles, for me, I always tend to lean on martinis. I really love a martini with a gin
Mhm.
that has some life and flavor and intriguing notes to it, because you'll keep dipping in there, and they typically are just opened a little bit by the vermouth, adding just a little bit more of those aromatics, and lowering that proof just a touch. So I can't help but just want to put this in a martini, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
with a lemon twist.
The French 75 was a good call out though, because also lemon twist, right?
Yeah,
And you get a little bit of the effervescence from the bubbles there
yeah,
that kind of aerate it. And I think that would definitely up the refreshment quality in this. I could see maybe also a Corpse Survivor number 2
yeah,
here if you
yeah.
wanted to go the sour route. I think that might be the first place that my brain kind of goes if
Okay,
we're gonna stick some acid in here. But what I figured I'd do is we do have some botanical notes here on the Google Doc that I shared. So
okay.
I figured that I would read out a couple things here. So Confluence American Gin, built to portray a sense of place
Mm,
and communicate it through celebrating the confluence in our lives. So near the distillery, here's a fun
okay.
fact. It's the horseradish capital of the world. So
Oh,
um, they incorporated horseradish and pink peppercorns. So we were right on
definitely, yeah.
peppercorns. They call out the coriander and the juniper, and I think you were also like right on the mark with the lemongrass call out, because they have galangal root,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
which
yeah.
is one of my favorites.
So good. I love it. So I hadn't experienced it until I came across a recipe, a David Chang recipe, and I asked for galangal, so I went and found it, and I fell in love. It is not ginger. It is not garlic. It is this incredibly vibrant spice that is a mix of kind of both of those things and
Mhm.
horseradish. Like, it is really, really lovely and vibrant. And if you guys haven't tried it, just go get some galangal and play with it for cocktails. Like, it makes a beautiful syrup.
I have never syrupified it. I have used it in
Yeah.
kind of I've used the dried version of it in the tiki bitters that we make, and
Mm,
and yeah. So here's, I think, a little place where, all right, we did our blind tasting, we
yeah.
made some guesses. Then we went and did some research, and we found like, oh, okay, here's some of the actual things that they're putting in there. And to me, what that helps me appreciate about why this gin is so great is because I can see the flavor blending that's going on, right? We've
Yeah.
got that horseradish root that is very intensely spicy. And then, how do you bridge the gap between horseradish and some of the other, maybe more delicate citruses and corianders? It's like,
Right.
galangal root's a really smart
It
way
is a
to
perfect
bridge
bridge.
that gap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, but interest, I don't, I mean, for me, the horseradish is just a slight brightness. Like, it's there. I'm not getting a quintessential, like what I would think of as horseradish,
Mm.
which are you?
Well, so yeah, so that's a good point. And I mean, maybe that has something to do with like the refreshment quality of the
Yes.
horseradish, and it's almost like a not mentholation, but it kind of does
Yeah.
that same thing, and it kind of stays with you. And I think also, this is a very soft gin. It's only clocking in at 40.5%,
Okay. Yeah.
81 proof, so it's
Ah.
not
Oh,
really
heard. Because it definitely feels different than that on the palate.
right.
It feels
And
much more robust on the palate. So absolutely, that is a textural component that I think the horseradish is adding.
yeah.
Huh. 40, really?
Yeah,
Huh.
40.5. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a really unique gin, and even not knowing some of the really cool botanical wizardry that's going on, I mean, you can appreciate it blind just in and of itself as a liquid, but then I think knowing a little bit more about it does sort of give you a little bit more of that intrigue. And for me, it's funny. Uh I was almost leaning away from the martini, but now that I think about that horseradish, I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of begs some Gibson
Right?
vibes.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And that would be lovely. I need to make some good pickled onions.
Uh, so I guess the last thing I want to make sure that people know is I do want to like call out the price points on these bottles just so that you can understand what shelf, so to
Yes.
speak, they're playing on.
That's smart.
So if you go to the Still 630 website, this is just being kind of released. It's a brand new product for them, and so they have a $40 pre-order, and it says that it's a $50 value on the site. So I'm not quite sure if that means they're going to be listing it on shelves at $50 a bottle. But for me, I mean, this is a $40 bottle. It's sitting right in that $35 to $40 range alongside some of the beautiful products by like St. George, by, alongside the Botanist. Like I think quality wise for me, this is playing right there. So, for me, $40 is not necessarily something I'm going to blink at, knowing the quality that's in the bottle. So that's kind of where we're sitting with this. But do you have any last thoughts that you want to wrap up on as we migrate to whiskey?
Yeah, no, price point, I completely agree with you on that. I think that because it does have a little bit of that lower proof, that may be why it's going to sit just a tiny bit lower than what I would expect for something like a Botanist. But I think that it's a really high quality gin, and I'm actually like, let me go ahead and pre-order this gin and make something delicious with it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.